And hopefully everybody can still see the slides. Jody and Zaf, can you give me a thumbs up that the slides are still fantastic? Okay. Welcome everyone to the second of parent webinars that we have been running this term. And this one's about proactive wellbeing at home with a connection to our Thrive program. I'm Damien and I'm one of the assistant principals with some oversight of wellbeing and engagement, and sharing the presentation this evening is Jody Dunstan, who's our Director of Proactive Wellbeing for the senior years, and Zaf Ograk, who's the Director of Proactive Wellbeing for middle years. So they'll do most of the talking. Just before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the Bunurong and Wadawurrung peoples and as the traditional owners of this land, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. So the goal really for this evening's session, it's a short, sharp session, but we're deliberately trying to be very focused, is to provide you with some examples of how you can support our proactive approach to wellbeing, particularly with a focus on sleep hygiene and with a particular focus on stress. And hopefully along the way give you some positive proactive strategies that you can use to develop positive wellbeing language at home and make a bit of a connection with your child's school experiences with what they're doing in Thrive, particularly with one focus. Just quickly, why this session for parents? One of our goals for this year into next year is to respond to some parent-carer feedback that we've received through our annual parent-carer survey. And there were three things that we wanted to improve on, and one was provide parents with opportunities to participate in your child's education. Try to build your confidence through some sessions that we're running to support your child's learning at home, and provide you with some information to help support your child's learning. So just to reintroduce our proactive wellbeing team before I pass over to Jody and Zaf, who are at the top there. So our structure at Suzanne Cory is we have what we call the proactive wellbeing team with our two directors of proactive wellbeing, one with a focus on senior students and one on middle students, as in 9s and 10s and 11s and 12s. And then we have our student coordinators, one for each of the four houses, with Lam, Pauline, Demi and Stephanie, and all of the students know those people very well, and they're very easy to find and accessible across the school. Supporting the work of the proactive wellbeing team, we have our student support services team, or commonly known as SSS, and they're located in our student support services hub. So we've got Beck Carmichael, who is the head of SSS, working closely alongside Alice Gatenby, who's our mental health practitioner, and supported by Claire Holmes and Karen Kirkland, who both have counselling roles, but both are working mostly in the careers practitioner space this year. So that's our team, and they're the people who are driving our proactive approach to student wellbeing, obviously with support from classroom teachers and particularly our Thrive teachers. All right, I'm going to pass over to Jody, who's going to focus on a session particularly to do with supporting you to support your child at home in terms of sleep nutrition. And I'll pass over to Jody.
Hi everyone, thanks for that, Damien, and thank you to everyone for joining us for this afternoon session. We really appreciate the investment of you all into your child's learning and growth and wellbeing. It is a collaborative approach, so we're definitely thankful for your presence. Next slide for me, thanks, Damien. So as Damien alluded to, a lot of our work in the wellbeing space is around being proactive, and what that means is supporting our students before they hit crisis point and taking steps to help them achieve better wellbeing rather than again hitting that crisis point, as I'd said before. So what that means is building sustainable habits that students and families can implement every day that helps to manage stress and build resilience long term, particularly as students hit the senior years. So what I want you to do is just sort of discuss with the people in your homes and internally reflect, if you've got no one with you, what does proactive wellbeing look like in your home at the moment? What do you do as a family to support your child's physical, mental, social health and well-being, I'll give you 20 seconds to have a bit of a think about that and just reflect on what you're currently doing, and then we'll get into what we're talking about today. All right, next slide, please. Thanks, Damien. Okay, so as we do with our students, no good learning comes without, unless you have a good goal, I guess. So our goal for this evening, particularly for my part of the presentation, is just to help you create a list of strategies that will help support your child's sleep. And we're going to talk about the reasons why that's important, particularly in the teenage years as we move forward. So I guess by the end of today, we're hoping that you'll be able to list a whole different range of strategies that you that could improve sleep habits, explain the importance of sleep for student wellbeing and success, so that empowers you to have those conversations with your young person, and also for you to be able to then go on and trial and implement a range of different strategies within your family that would help ideally improve the sleep patterns of your young person. So we'll get straight into it and talk about what we do know and what we observe so far. So the Australian data says that teenagers need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night to function in a happy and healthy and capable way. Currently, only about 50% of our teenagers are achieving that. And most teenagers are getting about 6.5 to 7.5 hours per night, which is really putting our young people into a state of sleep deprivation. That is particularly so for our students and young people who experience psychological distress or stress. Those who do experience that are 51% more likely to sleep less than 8 hours a fortnight. And that's just because of that, the impact that that stress has on their body. So next slide for me. Thanks, Damien. The things that cause that sleep deprivation or that lack of sleep, some of it is internal things that they can't control, but there's also plenty of things that they can. So to start with, when teenagers start going through puberty and experience puberty, their circadian rhythm actually shifts, and the way their hormones work shift. So they tend to get sleepier much later at night, which is often around 11 p.m. There's a lot of social changes, there's a lot of identity changes and pressures that happen. We know that screen time and social media is a big issue for our young people, and the amount of time that they're spending on that. Late intake of caffeinated drinks, increased competing priorities. They might have a part-time job, they're worried about their future plans, what's happening after school, their subjects, the SAC that they have coming up in the next couple of weeks, their sport, all those sorts of things are, it's a lot for somebody who's experiencing a large hormone shift and identity shift and trying to figure out who they want to be and where they want to go. So they're experiencing that they've got a lot on their plate. And as a result, sleep is often pushed towards the bottom of our list. And we often hear the narrative that our students, I was up all night studying because I have a SAC today. And that's just an example of that. Next slide. Thanks for me, Damien. So it's for us to understand why sleep is important. We obviously need to sort of know what the impacts of that poor sleep is. So this is just a brief list for you, I suppose. And in terms of school and academics, the key one there is reduced academic performance due to difficulty concentrating and poorer memory. So from a learning perspective, that's the critical one there. But not getting enough sleep does lead to generally chronic sleep deprivation, increased risk of depression and anxiety, low self-esteem, increased irritability. So they might sort of become a lot more reactive and a lot more heightened much quicker. And the poorer emotional regulation comes with that. Increased risk of long-term physical health problems, which is quite scary. So increased risk of things like diabetes, obesity, CVD. Increased risk of risk-taking behaviour, increased truancy, whether that be to school, to work, things like that, and poorer decision-making skills at a time when there are a lot of decisions that they're having to make, whether it's about their subjects, their future pathways, their friends, all those sorts of things. So it can be quite overwhelming. We're going to go into talking about what healthy sleep habits look like, and then talk about how you as parents and families can help implement those. So consistent bedtimes and wake times is the main one. Give or take a little, like an hour, hour and a half on any given night, depending on the family context and circumstances. No caffeine after 2 p.m. I think, you know, we often just go straight to coffee when we think about that, but things like soft drink also have a bit of caffeine in them too. So reducing the consumption of that after 2 p.m. Avoid using the bed for anything else. A lot of students will sometimes lay on their bed to study or, you know, recall some of their work, but doing that actually takes away that sleep environment. Phones and screens should be away at least 1 hour before bedtime. The blue light that comes from the phone, I guess the engagement that comes from that phone is quite disruptive to their sleep rhythms. Eating at least 2 hours before bed, so they're not trying to digest too much of the food when they're going to sleep. Have a bedtime routine that can include things like reading a book, not a screen, having a shower or a bath 30 minutes before. All those kinds of things can help the body get ready for sleep. As a health and PE teacher, I'm quite biased towards the physical activity as a healthy habit for sleep. It is not just useful for sleep, but also academic performance as well. We know a lot of our students tend to cut back on the sport as they hit the senior years, but it actually increases blood flow and therefore nutrients and oxygen to the brain. It also releases a protein that helps to develop and increase this neuron growth and synapse plasticity and all those kinds of things. So it actually improves memory and lowers stress. It's really important. The Australian Physical Activity Guidelines suggest at least 60 minutes a day for our teenagers. So that's a really important one. And the last one is, or the second last dot point there is, we know our students are experiencing a lot of stress. We know that there's a lot happening in their brains, and sometimes that can prevent them from falling asleep. So what's really useful in that instance is to have a notepad next to the bed, a notepad, not a device, and a pen. And any thought that is occupying their brain and preventing them from falling asleep, they just jot it down. They don't have to turn the light on to jot it down. They can just write it down with the light off, but the thought is then removed from their brain, put down on paper, and they can refer back to it in the morning. So that will often help take the thoughts that are floating around in their head out so that they can focus on going to sleep. Next slide for me, please, Damien. So they're the habits, but what can you do to help our students and your young people implement these habits? There's no use just going and saying, here's a whole list of strategies, start doing them. They're teenagers, we want to create healthy habits. We need to focus on one or two things at a time, something that is sustainable, some incremental changes that we can implement over a period of time. It's no use going all in all at once and saying you need to do all of these things, because it's not sustainable when they haven't built their association with it. So focusing on a couple of things at a time that are achievable, and then adding to that as time goes on. Setting and modeling family values around sleep. So you yourselves putting the screens away an hour before bedtime, having your own bedtime routine, not staying up till late yourselves, and getting up at a similar time every day is really useful. Upskill with them, learn about sleep with them. There's some resources linked on the last slide of this section that you can use to have those discussions. The other thing is encourage and not force sleep routines. Teenagers and young people don't like to be forced to do anything. They need to have a little bit of control, a little bit of power over their lives, and it gives them that sense of responsibility and accomplishment. So I think negotiating routines with them and talking about, okay, when do we think an appropriate bedtime is to achieve all the things they want to in the day? When's an appropriate wake up time? Where can we store their devices overnight, and when do they need to go away? Because keeping them in the bedroom is not a good idea. Promoting a healthy lifestyle through nutrition, through physical activity, through avoiding caffeine, all those sorts of things. And then if the problem persists, actually seeking professional help from a GP or sleep specialist of some sort. There's plenty of resources out there for this, so it's definitely not something to shy away from. Next slide for me, Damien. So before we get into Damien's presentation, I'd like you to just I know we're sort of going through this quite quickly, but I want you to have a think about the strategies that we've just talked about, and these will all be posted for you at a later date as well. But the strategies that we've just talked about, some of the tips that we've given you to implement those strategies, and just with whoever you're with in the house or within yourself, have 30 seconds to just think about what is one or two changes you would like to work with your young person for this week. What boundaries do you think need to be set for it to happen effectively? And remember, later on when you have the conversation with them, it will be a negotiation, like what sort of compromise, meet in the middle type thing. Give them a little bit of power to be reasonable. And how might you begin that conversation with them as well? Because sometimes these conversations can be tricky to start. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to have those thoughts and maybe conversations with somebody that you're with, if you are with anyone, and then Zaf will take over. Alrighty, they're the resources just there for you, so you'll be able to look back to these later on. There's an app there that students can download onto their phones that sort of coach them through sleep tactics and habits, and then there's some other resources that you and your young person can have a read through at a later date as well as, and you can of course reach out to me if you have any other questions. But thank you for listening. Thank you again for your engagement, and we'll pass on to Zaf.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for that lovely presentation there, Jody, as well. Look, my name is Zafar Orak. I'm the Director of Proactive Wellbeing for Middle Years, overseeing the years 9 to 10, but I'm also responsible for overseeing the implementation of the Thrive program at Suzanne Cory High School across the years 9 to 12. I'll give you a bit of a rundown on what Thrive is about. So basically, Thrive is an acronym, as you can see, for trust, health, respectful relationships, interpersonal skills, and values. And basically, the aim of this program is to give our students the necessary skills, okay, and knowledge to manage their own well-being, okay, and respond and monitor to the well-being needs of others, okay, allowing them to feel happy, healthy, capable, and engaged. Okay, just for some bit of a rundown for you as well. Thrive takes place once a week, okay, for approximately 27 minutes, okay, with a dedicated teacher who will be their teacher over the course from year 9 right up until year 12 till they graduate. As you can see here, there's a bit of a parent overview link. Once this presentation is made available to you online, I would encourage you to familiarize yourselves with this parent brochure regarding our Thrive program. Okay, basically gives you a bit of a rundown on what the Thrive program is and what it entails as well. So, and as you can see here, we've got an example lesson of what a Thrive lesson would look like. Okay, so one of the themes that we're focusing on is stress management. Okay, students will learn about what are the types of stress, okay, and how to reduce it, and have various practical strategies at their disposal to manage their own well-being, okay, and manage the well-being of others. Basically, what you've got here is a bit of a framework on how students can cope with stress. Okay, basically the 4-part framework, explaining you how students can cope with stress as well, and what you can do here to support your child's stress and distress as well, and how you can proactively build that resilience. Okay, allowing them to thrive in what we call a challenging world as well. Okay. This is an example of how we framed stress to our students. And just to give you a bit of rundown as well, the psychologists often distinguish between eustress, okay, which is a positive stress that motivates and focuses the energy, and basically distress. Okay, basically distress is negative stress that overwhelms and impairs one's ability to function as well. So basically, for this purpose of the session, we will use healthy and unhealthy stress to distinguish between two school-based experiences. Obviously, healthy stress occurs when the challenge is significant. Sorry, Damien. When the challenge is significant but manageable. but it energizes the students and promotes growth as well. Okay. Often these stresses are usually time bound and accompanied by support. Unhealthy stress obviously happens when demands are chronic, unrelenting, or excessive, and it basically erodes our students' emotional and physical well-being, particularly when students perceive they lack the resources to support and meet the demands. Healthy stress becomes unhealthy when those demands consistently exceed the resources available to the students, and this is where you will come in as a parent, because this is supporting our students as a teacher parent partnership as well. And you've got examples of healthy stress and unhealthy stress here for your viewing as well. Thanks, Damien. What we can do to support our child cope with stress, working with your child, okay, or your young person, by seeking help, problem solving, working together with them as well, and looking at reframing the situation. You can support them as a family member or a trusted adult. You can show competence by showing them that you believe in them, that they can succeed, as well as ensuring that they should believe in themselves. And as Jody rightfully pointed out, giving them choice and control over their stress and managing it as well. Okay. How you can frame that stress and how you can support it. Okay. You've got a lot on your plate. What feels most manageable? What can you tackle tonight, this week? Okay. Trying to giving them ways in which they can minimize um, the stress that they need to manage over a particular time as well. Okay. Or you might even ask them to invoke a prior experience of where they've had stress and how did you manage that and what would you do in this instance as well. Next slide, please, Damien. So I'll take you through some strategies as well, about 3 strategies on how you can support your young person at home. Okay, basically, a good start is in acknowledging that stress is a quite natural experience. That's something that matters to one another. Okay, you can support them by pausing your child, identifying what is a sort of stress, what is the appraisal of it, and what are some of the responses that you can provide as well. Okay, talking about your own experiences with stress and how you manage them as well. Okay, often past anecdotes are a good way to empower our young person at home. And obviously reminding them that stress can be positive as eustress, and it can allow you to focus, sharpen your focus and energy as well. Next slide, please, Damien. Embedding reflection in our daily lives. Quite a lot of us, weren't privy to being able to embed reflection in our daily lives. As a teacher, I've had to learn that as an adult. Okay, building the reflection into my daily life, because I didn't have these necessary presentations or a trusted adult who could guide me through the day-to-day lives of stress as well. So embedding reflection, okay, in the day-to-day interactions and day-to-day managing of stress, okay, allows this to be manageable. An example could be, asking your young person at home, what worked for you today? What might you try differently next time? Okay. You've got a big test coming up, a big assessment coming up. Supporting your young person at home to create a plan, drawing on what they've done in the past has also worked. Okay. And also in instances where it hasn't worked as well. Next one, please, Damien. Just right challenges. Okay. We as adults can't help ourselves at times. We want to solve everything, we want to be their savior, but we need to understand they need to stretch, they need to understand on how to manage their struggles as well. So instead of just jumping in and trying to save the day, I would encourage you to think about, what feels doable. Okay, how can I support the child, the young person at home without taking over? Okay, what is it that that your young person at home is able to do, and what are you some ways that you can support them as well? Recognize the effort, their persistence, the resilience, not just the end game, not just what they're trying to achieve. Okay, this obviously going to allow them to understand okay, and appreciate the value in their struggle, okay. And I'll leave you with this little parting advice as well. Don't lose sight of the fact that that young person at home is still your child, and don't just define them based on the outcomes as well. Okay, no matter what grade they're going to get on that project, that assessment task, or that SAC, they are still your child. They are still your young person, and please do not lose sight of that. That's it from me. I'm going to pass over to Damien now. You're on mute, Damien.
Let's try that again. Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Jody. One of the things that, one of the reasons, everyone, that we've chosen these two very narrow focuses for tonight is, interestingly, in some feedback that we've collected from our students over the last 2 years to do with their lessons and learnings in our Thrive program. A very common theme that's come through in topics that either have engaged the students memorably, or topics that they want to learn more about, have been to do with both sleep and stress. And so I think what we're trying to do with tonight's session and other sessions that we've got planned for this year and into next is run some more focus sessions around parent education to help support the messaging that's coming through the lessons that students are learning about that, as well as pick up on some of the topics and some of the themes that we see present every day at school, and stress and sleep, and the connection between the two of those are certainly very important. So that's why we sort of thought that tonight's session, rather than giving you a suite of 100,000 strategies to use, that just focusing on two very important topics was a good place to start. Just to wrap up, we will make the slides available for you, and the recording for tonight. And you can find those through Compass. So that where that's going to be is Compass through school documentation, the A to Z of school information and information sessions. And there'll be the recording there, as well as the slides from tonight. There'll be also a link I'll put out in a Compass post with a very short feedback survey, because of course this is new territory for us in putting together some very short, sharp but focused parent webinars. So of course we'd love your feedback so we can make these useful and engaging and practical as they can be for parents going forward as well. So we appreciate any feedback that you can give in a very short survey. And we've also got the sleep tips for parents, and some other resources that are embedded in the presentation as well. So that brings us to 6:58. We're pretty much right on time, so I'm very happy about that. I didn't mention at the start, but we weren't monitoring the chat, so I don't see any questions that have been popped in the chat. Thank you, Gerda, for the thank you. But look, if you do have any follow-up questions or issues that you'd like to raise, you know how to contact us at school, and you know who the Proactive Wellbeing team is, as well as the Triple S team as well. So thanks very much, everyone. I'm going to hit stop on record.